Hello everyone. Last time we started with Introduction to Ethics. So in the same sequence, today we will start with the first topic, that is Ethics and Human Interface, and the first subtopic under this topic is a sense of ethics in human actions. So last time friends we started with quotes, but today we'll start off with a picture. I want you all to read this news. This was some 4 years back in Kerala. A tribal man tied up and he was beaten to death while a few people can be seen here clicking selfies. So the crux of the story I will tell you is that a man named Madhu who was thrashed and he was beaten to such an extent that he collapsed to his injuries after a few hours. His fault being that he stole some items from a shop, and the items were mainly pertaining to food. Now this whole incident, it caused a lot of uproar, it grabbed media headlines, etc. And what followed is not very encouraging. After 2-3 years, one of the accused, he was promoted and he was made the branch secretary of a political party in Kerala. And even after 4 years of the incidents, justice has not been meted to this man named Madhu. So, what do we get from this story? There are 3-4 key questions here which this particular episode raises. So, the first being mobocracy versus rule of law. For a state like Kerala, which stands out vis-a-vis social indicators, do we expect that such a thing shall ever take place in a state like Kerala? I don't think so. But still what we observe is that there is a certain tendency in society which changes the behavior in a manner that individuals do not conform to the expected lines of behavior or the expected ethical lines of behavior. Even in a developed state like Kerala, mobocracy or mob rule has been seen, on a number of occasions. So now the question to us is, are the people who were involved in this episode, were they not literate, or were they not aware of what is expected from them in a literate society? And to add to it, most of them who were involved in this gruesome incidents belong to a political party, or they were active in politics somehow. The second question, which is more interesting from the perspective of ethics here, is did Madhu, a tribal man bereft of resources and money as well, did he commit a crime when he stole food to satiate his hunger? Well, the answer is not very simple here, because there are various perspectives through which we answer. Let's see two major perspectives that we discussed in the introduction video as well. The first is the deontological perspective, and the famous proponents like Mahatma Gandhi and Immanuel Kant, they would stick to it, and they would say that Madhu should never have stolen items, even be it food, even be it to satiate his hunger, and that hunger would have become intolerable for that man. So this deontological perspective, which in short stands for duty for the sake of duty, it says that whatever be the circumstances, individuals should stick to one's duty. Now there is another perspective. That perspective is consequentialist perspective, through which even if stealing is bad, but to steal food to satiate somebody's hunger, or if we take it to another extreme, to steal drugs to save one's ailing relatives, cannot be considered to be as bad a crime as stealing would otherwise be. So the end in question in the consequentialist perspective is very important. However, in the deontological perspective, it's only the means that one should see. So this was a brief overview to tell you that even after the economic indicators improving a lot, the social indicators improving, the democracy getting matured, there are deep ethical questions that the society grapples with even at this day and age. So we'll try to answer all these dilemmas, all these difficulties, and all these deep ethical questions while we continue our lectures. So first let us see what are we going to study today precisely. So this is the table of contents. We shall see ethics, values, norms, principles, morals, the concepts which are involved, the interplay of words, the overlap and the slight differences between these terminologies. And then we shall also see interrelationship between ethics, morality and laws. So let us begin our lecture. So again we have put a quote by Peter Stewart, and he says that ethics is knowing the difference between what you have the right to do and what is right to do. So we have segregated it into two parts: what you have the right to do and what is right to do. So by this, what you have the right to do, one tries to imply the legal rights, the social rights which generally a society confirms informally through the prevalent norms, beliefs, etc., and obviously the legal right as well. So, but all those things, they might not always tell you that this is the thing or this is the ethical course of action that you should perform. So for that you have to read ethics and you have to know ethics, so that you can always conclude what is the right to do, rather than always claiming that what you have the right to do. Like for example, in the introduction video as well, we discussed, you are traveling in a car and there is someone bleeding on the roadside. No law compels you to take the victim and take him to the hospital for treatment, etc. But once you have a deep sense of ethics, you know what is the right to do, you will be probably propelled from inside to do the right thing. And by not doing the right thing, you will have a mental dissonance that will make it difficult for you to justify your own actions. So this interplay between what is right and what are your rights is somewhat ethics, and therefore what we can always conclude is that ethics has a larger domain than rights, laws, etc. Let us begin with ethics. Well, first let us see what is not ethics. Ethics is not morality. Morality, we'll see it in detail. In the introduction video, we saw morality, that morality is a personal concept wherein one tries to behave or one tries to act according to the moral principles which one considers to be correct or true. So ethics is not solely morality, not solely religion, because we can always say that ethics is also for atheists who do not believe in religion at all. Further, ethics is not just following the law. Like we just discussed, the ambit of ethics is larger than law, because there are more cases wherein your behavior can be legal but not ethical. And ethics is not even following culturally accepted norms, because we'll see in the later parts of our lecture series that culture does not necessarily sanction the ethical things all the time, because there are examples wherein the cultures, they have promoted retrogressive practices. Like in Taliban we see these days, they have taken over Afghanistan, and the promise of women empowerment and progress of women in society has it has proven to be hollow, as it was expected from the regime of Taliban. Next is, we saw definitions of ethics last time as well, so we'll have a relook at them. The first is, the very shortest definition is, ethics is sum of morality and reasoning. Like we just discussed, morality is personal take on these values, these principles, etc. And if the society or reasons out within itself, or the individuals reason out within themselves, there is a framework that comes into place, and that framework is called as ethics. So it is based on well-founded standards of right and wrong. that prescribe what humans ought to do, usually in terms of rights, obligations, benefits to society, fairness, or specific virtues. So, well, these are terms which will keep, recurring themselves, and we'll keep discussing them. But ethics is something which, tries to establish or tries to tell human beings that they ought to do or ought to behave in a certain manner, so that rights, obligations, benefits to society, fairness, or specific virtues all are taken care of in a certain order. Second is that conduct in ethics means moral conduct or the moral life, right? So, till the time referred otherwise, the word conduct generally means moral conduct. And how do we reach to the meaning of the term moral conduct? Moral conduct is the type of conduct, we can say, which is universally in accordance with the ethical principles. And what are these principles? Like we just saw a few of them: fairness, honesty, integrity, etc. Now, like we just discussed, morality is something that's personal and normative, whereas ethics is the standards of good and bad distinguished by certain community or social setting. Well, so morality, if gets extrapolated and is mixed with reason, discussion within the society, etc., it leads to formation of that framework like we discussed, and that framework is called as ethics. So ethics is primarily concerned with the standards that regulate our judgments of rights and wrong. These definitions we saw last time as well. Ethics is a system of moral principles or rules of behavior. These moral principles, they can be subjective to various societies, but there are a few moral principles which are universally accepted and followed all across the board. So ethics studies the norms or standards of right and wrong used to judge actions. So it's not just the study of actions, but also the study of norms or standards which confer rightness and wrongness to an action. The other one is ethics is about the choices that we make or fail to make. So this very much tells us that the ambit is so broad. It's not just covers whatever choices we are making in life, but also what we fail to do at times, which we should have performed, because that must have been in accordance with the ethical principles of society. So therefore, ethics explains the guiding principles to decide what is right and wrong. It's a combination of one and two. So a guiding principle, these principles are the same moral principle that we have been discussing, and it enables us to decide what is right and wrong. So now we formally begin our first topic, which is a part of in tune with the syllabus prescribed by UPSC, that is essence of ethics. First, let us see the dictionary meaning of the word essence. Essence is the intrinsic nature or indispensable quality of something which determines its character, right? So, in simple terms, we can say that essence is something without which the thing does not remain to be same, right? For example, if we talk about Bhagavad Gita, so it has a famous slogan of Nishkam Karma. If we take that Nishkam Karma out of Bhagavad Gita, it does not remain same anymore. So Nishkam Karma can be considered to be the essence of Bhagavad Gita. So similarly, essence of ethics is the requirement of, there are a lot of factors which we have enlisted here, which we can consider that these factors, they form the essence of ethics. So one of them being that it is the requirement of common ethical principles to ensure peace, harmony and stability in society. So ethics helps in establishment of peace, harmony and stability in society. How does it do so? Like there is a famous concept used in the book Sapiens written by Harari. In that book he says that the only or the most significant thing that separates human beings from other species is the ability of human beings to believe in stories, right? So in that sense, the human beings, they believe in stories, and the stories they believe in, they are commonly believed by, a certain group of individuals, or maybe a certain nation, or maybe the world at large. So there are two qualities which come up from this. One is this ability to believe in stories, and the other one is the ability to cooperate amongst themselves. And how that cooperation is possible, that is because of the prevalence of ethical principles, and to be precise, the common ethical principles in society. Let us see an example. Suppose we have a very big stadium in which there is a concert going on, and human beings are, all the human beings are sitting there and watching or enjoying that concert. Now instead of human beings, imagine some other species, for that matter monkeys there, a stadium full of monkeys. Can you ever imagine the same kind of orderness? I'm sure there will be huge amount of madness there and chaos in the stadium. So this harmony, this peace, and this stability that we attribute to human beings is possible because of prevalence of common ethical principles across the board. And the sample size in consideration can be different, and one can always argue that these ethical principles, they vary. But yes, the size of the sample, in case of human beings, is very huge. So for example, we can say that 1.3 billion people of India, they follow certain, common ethical principles, and that helps ensure, a feeling of amity, peace, brotherhood amongst all the, citizens of our country. So the sample size being very huge in case of human beings, and that is only possible because of the ethical practices or the ethical belief systems of a society. And there are common principles or common virtues like accountability, empathy, honesty, integrity, probity, compassion, etc. These virtues, they are reflected in the ethical behavior or the prevalence of ethical norms. And these virtues, they lie at the core of ethics. Therefore, they form the essence of ethics. Like, to establish these virtues in a society, one needs to, have ethics. So this forms the next premise of sense of ethics. Next one is to know what will benefit our lives and what will be detrimental. So, a very recent example comes to my mind. 2-3 days back, Virat Kohli revealed that he was faking his intensity of late, that he was not feeling it from within, but he had to continue, performing or to, behaving in a certain manner that he had been behaving because of his reputation or because of his continuity of the way he was performing or behaving. So that has started debates in cricketing circles about mental health, etc. So now there has come a time wherein he has realized certain things, that this mode of behavior or this mode of activity does not suit him, or it is not going to be sustainable in the long run. So what has helped him in this case is the ethics or the knowledge of principles, moral principles which govern your behavior, to enable him to know that such practice or such behavior will not benefit him in his life, or it can be detrimental, and eventually his mental health can keep deteriorating, which will be detrimental to his both personal as well as professional life. So it's the ethics which helps you in knowing what shall benefit you and what shall be detrimental to you. Ethics is also necessary to form a platform for beliefs. The choices which individuals make become fossilized over a period of time into beliefs and value system of society. So suppose tomorrow suddenly everyone starts treating women equally, or everyone starts believing that patriarchy is harmful to the society, there are economic reasons for equality to women, there are social reasons, political reasons, all kinds of reasons, and all the citizens, they suddenly start believing something that equality to women is not only necessary, but it is, it compulsory now to do it in society. In that case, over a period of time, this belief, it shall get fossilized and it will become a part of the value system, and the Indian society, maybe after a decade or two, will appear to be as equal in the sense of women empowerment as compared to the counterparts in Europe. So it's the game of belief systems. So the position of women in society that we currently see can be ascribed to the value systems or the belief systems which were prevalent in society at some point. So all this can be traced back to history of India. So somewhere a slight change in belief system will lead to change in choices which an individual makes, and these changes will ensure these maintenance of or sustenance of these changes in one's behavior leads to change in value system. And so the newer value systems, they get fossilized, and this way also a society can be reformed. So therein lies the essence of ethics. Ethics also act as a platform for the legal framework. Generally, what happens is that laws are derived from ethics. A very pertinent example, and the recent one as well, is the surrogacy laws. So in 2019, there was a surrogacy bill that was presented to the parliament. In that bill, it was categorically stated that commercial surrogacy in India is prohibited. This even in spite of the fact that India has accepted, free market principles, still India has not allowed commercial surrogacy. We can attribute it to, sacrosanct status that is ascribed to motherhood in our society, that it should not be commercialized, it should not be sold. Because of that belief system in society, the surrogacy laws have been framed in that manner. Now we shall also see recent certain Supreme Court judgments, so that we may be able to understand the nuances or the ethical dilemmas or the ethical values which are at stake and which are generally discussed in contemporary times in society. So the first one is Shaira Bano versus Union of India, famously known as the Triple Talaq case. So on 22nd August 2017, the verdict was given out. It was a very old practice wherein in one go a Muslim male could have given divorce to his wife. So this practice was considered to be unconstitutional by the Honorable Supreme Court of India, and thus it was declared illegal now henceforth. So there are a lot of ethical questions which somehow crop up in these arguments. The most common question being is, well, these two questions are, first is the equality of women. So what Supreme Court ruled in this matter is that women have a right to equality, and that right is being hampered by the provision of Triple Talaq. So under Article 14, 15, etc., this practice was considered to be unconstitutional. However, a deeper question is also involved, that is, whether the state can interfere in the personal and religious affairs of its citizens. Because we all are aware that Article 25, 26, 29, 30, etc., they provide certain rights to religious freedom, protection of rights of minorities, etc. So is it okay for the apex court of India to interfere in such matters, or shouldn't it be the citizens of a country which should decide on all this? So like we were just discussing, that generally ethics in a democratic society give rise to laws. However, there are other ways as well. Like in this case, what has happened is the learned people or the wise men of a society, they have felt that there is certain illegal practice which is denigrating the dignity of women in our society. So that practice has been considered to be unconstitutional, and this judgment is paving way for evolution of better ethics when it comes to equality of women. So the other way around can also be true, that laws can also shape the ethics of the society. We'll see other examples of it when we discuss interrelation between laws and ethics. So there are key questions involved in most of the constitutional judgments. So Supreme Court, what it does is it tries to weigh between the pros and cons and the various principles involved, and it has to prioritize somehow which principle to protect at the cost of which. The next one is the Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of India, famously known as the homosexuality case. So in this judgment, Supreme Court ruled that the colonial era law which criminalized homosexual acts, it was considered to be unconstitutional, and section 377 of Indian Penal Code has been striked off, right? So something that was considered to be a mental disorder till maybe a decade or two has been made to be somehow legalized in India. How do we all see that? I mean, does it raise a few pertinent ethical questions? So the key questions involved are about privacy, liberty of individuals, dignity of individuals, and what is natural versus what is unnatural, right? So continuing homosexuality as an offense in the law books, the argument was to prevent sexually transmitted diseases and to prevent crimes against children, etc. So what Supreme Court ruled is that these values, the right to privacy, the dignity of individual, which is guaranteed under Article 21, that is right to life and personal liberty, these rights are being deeply hampered by this particular provisions, and therefore it is pertinent that individuals be given their own choices when it comes to their bodily integrity, etc. So even if they are not allowed to do something in public, but in their personal spaces they have all the rights to choose the way they want to choose partners, or they want to have sex, or they choose their personal intimacies, etc. So the question of natural versus unnatural, it was addressed in a very scientific manner, wherein it was observed that in ancient temples like Khajuraho as well, there are certain practices of homosexuality depicted on the walls of the temples. Further, this practice is very much prevalent in other species of mammals like chimpanzees, gorillas, lemurs, etc. So it had some scientific basis as well. But through all this, what we are seeing is that it's not the society which is discussing and changing the ethics of the society, or changing the moral principles. It is the Supreme Court or some law-making agency that is making laws, and that in return is shaping the public discourse or the ethical framework of the society. So it acts both ways. Now one more was the famous Puttaswamy case in 2017, in which a 9-judge bench unanimously affirmed that right to privacy is a fundamental right to citizens in accordance with Article 21 of Constitution of India. So this right to privacy is the founding right which helps individuals enjoy all the other rights, right? So these were a few famous cases of Supreme Court which have been recently been doing the rounds, and which pertain to the deeper questions of ethics in society. Now we shall go on to some other terms which are very important from the perspective of reading or learning ethics. The first one is beliefs. So there is a chain of concepts which starts from beliefs. Beliefs, they are the ideas, viewpoints and attitudes of a particular group or a society. So belief system does not need to have any rationality. It need not be based on any scientific argument or scientific maybe principles, etc. You believe something to be true, and that is a part of your belief system. So therein it ends. So these beliefs, they can be based on fables, myths, folklore, traditions and superstitions as well in certain cases. So that is why it's very risky to base the ethics of a society on belief systems of individuals as well as the society itself. because a lot of reasoning, a lot of analysis and a lot of testing has to be done to those practices and principles so as to make them a part of the ethical framework of the society. These beliefs, they can also be true and verifiable facts, history or legends. So, well, they can be very much true, like a lot of famous stories which definitely are a part of belief system of our beings in India. A famous example is of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. His life, his deeds, all of them, they are the part of the famous public folklore, and it is inspiring people. It's a deep part of their belief system, especially in the state of Maharashtra, and it is true as well, it is verifiable also. But there can be certain beliefs which are based on superstitions. Like, a lot of us believe that if a cat crosses our way, we should not continue the journey, because there is something which uneventful might happen, or something unpredicted which might not suit us can happen. So beliefs can be both positive as well as negative. However, beliefs are very important because they give us hope. A human being thrives on what he or she believes in. So an individual who's more rational, who's more scientific, there are more chances that he or she will have more scientific belief system. However, for individual who's more religious or spiritual, can also have a positive belief system owing to one's allegiance or one's adherence to values taught in those scriptures or maybe religious books, etc. So overall, beliefs, they provide hope and they help human beings sustain in adverse circumstances. So beliefs are important, even if they are not always essential to be a part of the ethical framework of society. Next one is values. So values, they denote preference for good or bad. Values are nothing but they are lasting beliefs or ideas within an individual about what is good or bad and desirable of or undesirable. So they denote the preference and they are gathered through external environment, family as well as experiences. So one's values, they are, even if they are dynamic, at a very young age or formative age, one is more prone to learning values, and the chances of one's value system changing at a later age, it keeps reducing with age. However, they are the ones which denote the preference for good or bad. So if you are a spiritual or a religious person and base your belief system or value system on the religious teachings or the religious sayings, etc., you're bound to have better value system. Values are generally expressed in the terms of should. Values can be positive as well as negative. For example, through belief, Ramayana is the most famous epic in India, and one can come to value beliefs such as respect to elders, honesty, integrity, etc. through the teachings from Lord Rama. However, one can also assign negative values to acts such as kidnapping, insulting, etc. that we witnessed in various anecdotes of Ramayana. So values, they can be positive as well as negative. The same stories can help you teach positive values as well as what is negative as a value. The values thus act as guiding principles to move ahead. It has a major influence on person's behavior and attitude. So beliefs, they are shaping the value system, and those value systems, they are playing a very important role in guiding the individuals especially in adverse circumstances and moving ahead. Now the next one is norms. So these norms are the social expectations. These norms they guide behavior. And these norms, they are informal ways in which individuals are supposed to act or behave in a society. They are the informal guidelines. They are basically a form of collective expectations of communities, members from each other. What is the difference between a value and a norm? So norm is something which is the expected behavior or the expected pattern in a society. However, values are the principles on which individual bases his or her actions. So values, they are rather more personal in the context of ethics. However, norms are the prevalent principles or values in a society. So they can be called as a form of social control or social pressure on individual to confirm, include uniformity and check deviant behavior. In spite of the fact that we have laws in place for most of the things, like we all must be aware that India has the lengthiest written constitution in the world. In spite of that, there are norms in various parts of societies, which different societies, based on their cultural milieu, their social milieu, they have norms which ensure that individuals, they restrict themselves to a certain pattern of behavior, and very little deviation or no deviation is observed from that pattern. So these norms, they are expressed through social customs, folkways or modes. Norms provide order in society. For example, it is a norm in Indian society that a son must obey his parents' commands. So this kind of makes it incumbent upon the son to obey his father's commands, and if he does not do so, or if an individual does not conform to norms, he attracts punishments. Punishments may be in the form of being looked down upon, derision, scolding, boycott, imposing penance, etc. So these are basically informal guidance for which punishments are also informal. For breaking a social norm, one cannot be tried in a court of law. However, there are other informal modes of punishments like we just saw. So laws are a later stage of evolution of norms, where the society has codified the terms of expected and unexpected behavior from its members. So norms, if they are prevalent in society and majority or most of the people in society, they agree that these norms are very essential for the behavior and behavior patterns of the individuals, these norms, they get converted into laws. Well, laws are the latest stage of evolution of norms, where the society has codified the terms of expected and unexpected behavior from its members. Those who are deviant are tried in a court of law and punished accordingly. Right. So once certain norms, they become universally accepted in a society, those norms can be converted to laws as well. Now, if some norm is converted into law, the individual can be tried now in a court of law and punished accordingly for breaking that law. So it is important to note that individual norms are imposed externally, whereas beliefs and values are internal. So norms, and later on they take the form of laws. These are the things which are imposed externally, whereas the concepts like beliefs and values like that we just discussed, they are the internal ones, right? So beliefs and values, they are more subjective, and because it's very difficult to have objectivity in individualized or personalized things, but norms and standards, norms and laws, they are more universal because they are externally discussed and then imposed upon individuals. So norms, they are a specific guide to behavior, whereas values provide indirect guidance only, right? So norms are a specific guide to behavior, whereas values provide indirect guidance only. Norms or laws, if we see an evolved form of norms, so they very specifically prescribe what is to be done and what is prohibited. However, values, they provide, a guiding principle only, and on those values are based actions of individuals. The next one is principles. So values, beliefs, morality, they vary from individuals to individuals. So that is why we just discussed it's very difficult to have objectivity in these concepts, and ethics may also differ in different communities and culture. Although ethics is a more universal concept than these 3 or 4 terms called values, beliefs, morality. However, the word principles denotes the rules or laws that are universal in nature. These principles, they are to be, adhered to, or they are to be respected across the board. For example, fairness, truthfulness, equality, justice, these are the principles which are to be respected and which are to be valued across all societies, all nations. So, principles is a more universal concept than values, beliefs, morality. There is a famous quote on the word principles that we have picked up that states that an army of principles can penetrate where an army of soldiers cannot. It was said by Thomas Paine. So all these quotes that we keep discussing, they will help you in forming very good answers in ethics. We'll come to the answer writing part as well gradually as we move along. Now, the term that comes closest to ethics is morals. Morals, they are the beliefs of an individual or a group as to what is right or wrong, acceptable or unacceptable. So here we have used the term, here we have used 2 terms, beliefs of an individual or a group. So it's not just the individual. We discussed that morals are more of an individualistic concept or individualistic approach to behavior, but they can be considered to be a part of a small group as well, right? So morality is ultimately a personal compass, a personal choice. For example, there are a lot of principles. The 5 major principles of Jainism are truth, non-violence, non-stealing and celibacy, as well as non-attachment. So all those who follow the religion of Jainism, they might not be following these 5 principles currently, but still they consider themselves as followers of Jainism or consider themselves as Jain itself. So ultimately it's the choice of the individual to follow certain morals or not. There can be other cases as well. So morals are the principles of right behavior which we use to judge the goodness or badness of human character. They are very similar to ethics. However, as we just saw, they are the personalized or individualistic characters. There are 2 types of people who deviate from morality. The ones are amoral. They are completely indifferent to right or wrong. They are called as amoral. While those who do evil acts or who do acts which can never be put in the category of moral acts, they are called as immoral people. And morals may also change over time. Historically, religion has been an important source of morals because the ancient Christian society, Hindu society as well as Islamic societies, all these societies have been based primarily on the religious belief systems, the religious teachings, the religious scriptures, etc. So historically, religion has been the major source of morality of the society. But however, since more contributory factors like science, technology, etc. are coming up, so the morality is getting shaped up. Therefore, morality is subject to change. It's a very dynamic concept, as is ethics. So both morality and ethics cannot be considered as static concepts, but they are the dynamic concepts which continue to evolve as the society evolves. Like we just discussed, with knowledge a person's morals may change. For example, homosexuality, like we discussed in one of our slides today, was considered to be an unnatural act, a mental disorder to say it so. Now has been legalized by the Honorable Supreme Court, and therefore it has been gaining more acceptance now. So, the morality of the society vis-a-vis this particular thing called homosexuality has been changing and evolving. Some morals, they transcend time and cultures. For example, selfishness is considered as immoral, whereas loyalty and telling the truth, they are considered as moral. And these principles, they have to be uniformly believed or accepted. Since we have discussed that morals are individual choice, they lack objectivity. Therefore, morals do not guarantee consistent action. Actual behavior or a person may deviate from his or her morals. For example, many of us might consider cheating in exams as immoral, but a lot of those believing so would be actually cheating in the exams whenever they get a chance to do so. Therefore, morality is not just subject to personal belief, but it is subject to situations, time, circumstances as well. Therefore, it is very difficult to, create an objectivity as far as morals are concerned. Now we shall see the interrelationship between ethics, morality and law. Well, as a field, ethics describes inquiry, investigation, analysis and application of moral principles and dilemmas. We'll keep seeing these moral dilemmas, these ethical dilemmas as we have been seeing today. And ethics can refer to a personal belief system or rules of conduct or study of moral philosophy. Here we are seeing ethics as a branch of philosophy or as a field in itself. It provides a framework for understanding and interpreting right and wrong in a group or a society. Right. So, ethics can refer to personal belief system, but primarily it provides framework for the society. So, it's a concept that we discuss at the level of society. Ethics are different because the element of reasoning and critical analysis is the key factor in arriving at acceptable or unacceptable conduct or decision. So, because once moral principles or morality, it is reasoned out within individuals or within individuals that form a society, therefore ethics can vary from society to society, from one community to other. Ethics is also considered as moral philosophy. It is considered with questions of how people ought to act and the search for a definition of right and good conduct and good life. So, ethics is not just about the study or boosting knowledge of a certain subject. It's also about telling people how they should act and behave, and it also tries to keep searching in this evolving social dynamics. It tries to keep searching for definition of a right conduct and a good life. So here ethics also involves systematizing, defending and recommending concepts of right and wrong behavior. So ethics can be considered as the discourse wherein various arguments are made from all these stakeholders concerned, and certain principles that come up to be accepted universally, and those principles form the part of the ethical framework of a society. There are many different approaches to arriving at right conduct, that is the ethical behavior. A few of them are virtue based, duty based and utility based. We'll discuss all these different approaches of ethics in detail whenever we come to thinkers, philosophers and different branches of ethics, etc. So ethics refers to the rules concerning upright behavior, and the ethics can vary because in the introductory lecture also we saw professional ethics or the applied part of ethics. So different professions, they form a code to tell its followers what is the upright behavior when it comes to that particular profession. So ethics, many organizations have rules concerning the standards of behavior of their employees, right? For example, it's a very pertinent example these days that a hospital may require doctors to prescribe the treatment which balance the requirement, effectiveness and cost to the patient. Like the guidelines, they are there for doctors to prescribe generic drugs. Although that in a way reduces their freedom, but that is to benefit or to keep the practice, the whole profession ethical, which considers the effectiveness as well as the cost of the medicine to the patient as well. Ethics are externally imposed. Since they come from external source, they tend to be consistent and objective as compared to morals, values, etc., which come from inside. Ethics requires the person to act in specific ways. For example, truthfulness, honesty, integrity, respect, fairness are examples of ethical principles, and all persons, all citizens, they are expected to follow these principles generally in their daily lives. Digression from these standards is considered unethical and may be informally disapproved or censored. So these are the common ethical principles which you all should be remembering. Truthfulness, honesty, integrity, respect, fairness. These are the most common principles which we can consider as ethical principles, and digression from these standards or these principles is considered unethical and may be informally disapproved or censored. Like, for example, suppose there is a housing society. Like these days we have been seeing videos in which people behave very rashly to one another, or especially to people of lower strata, like guards who are manning the gates of the society. So in those situations, if there are certain set of people who do not behave well, or who speak loudly, who shout continuously at people of lower strata, so even if there is no immediate legal remedy available in smaller cases, there is a consensus among the people living in the society or in the neighborhood, and such persons or such people, they can be socially boycotted or looked down upon, or they can be told, or they can be censored about their wrong behavioral practices. So that ways, ethics, if being not followed by certain individuals, there are not just legal but as well as informal means through which their behavior can be checked upon. Now, ethics and morality, they seem to carry the same meaning and they are generally used interchangeably. However, some philosophers, they do make a distinction between the two. Ethics differs from morals and morality in that ethics denotes the theory of right action and the greater good, while morals indicate their practice at the individual level. Like we just discussed, ethics is the social concept. There are certain principles that are prevalent in the society because of ethics or adherence to ethics by the society. Now these principles, they are subject to individual morality. If individuals also believe in those principles, they are bound to be a part of their behavior, and therein the role of morality comes, and morality therefore becomes the practice of those ethical principles at the individual level. In other words, we can say that ethics is the science of morals and morals are the practice of ethics. So ethics, in simple terms, we can say that ethics is a theoretical branch, and morals, they are the end of that branch which leads to practice of ethics at individual levels. See, the most important human endeavor is the striving for morality in our actions. Our inner balance and even our very existence depends on it. Only morality in our actions can give beauty and dignity to life. This has been said by none other than Albert Einstein himself. So he also considers morality as the most important human endeavor. So this tells about the importance of ethics and morality. Now we shall see interrelationship between ethics and laws. Ethics is basically a reasoned framework that we discussed in a society about what is the right thing to do. However, there can be a lot of subjectivity. Most of the members, they might differ, or they might have their own take upon ethics, even if those principles they are they are universally accepted. Individual can show deviations in their belief systems, practice of those values, etc. So there ought to be a minimum enforceable standard of behavior in society, and now this minimum enforceable standard is called as law. So law is necessary for a community to be stable so that it can progress in a harmonious way. We just talked about deviations. Like these days we have been seeing a large scale deviations because in the age of social media, what we are seeing is people are being bullied. Law is necessary for community to be stable so that it can progress in a harmonious way. Law is universally accepted, recognized and enforced. Right. So in introductory lecture also we discussed about the gun laws in USA. Suddenly a lot of usage of guns has been witnessed in schools in US. Young kids, they are using guns these days. So if not checked upon, if there is no legal framework which protects from such behavior, the harmony and peace in society cannot be established. Therefore law becomes necessary. Ethics law is created with the purpose of maintaining social order, peace, justice in the society, and to provide protection to the general public and safeguard their interest. Well, more than harmony, peace, brotherhood, which we aspire from the ethical framework, law has different aspirations, and the aspirations are to maintain social order, peace, justice in the society, and to provide protection to the general public and safeguard their interest. Merely adhering to ethics or practice of ethics does not lead to guarantee of these virtues that we have discussed. So therefore law becomes necessary. Laws are generally made after considering ethical principles and moral values in mind, because societies, they have their own value systems, own moral principles or ethical values. All those are considered in making laws. Like we just discussed about the surrogacy bill. The provisions are very much in tune with the ethical principles of Indian society. Further, laws, rules and regulations enacted by an appropriate authority which has the mechanisms to enforce them and punish those who are in its contravention. Right. So these laws and rules, they cannot be enforced just like that. There has to be a certain appropriate authority, an appropriate mechanism through which these laws are formed and then enforced. Without these appropriate authorities and mechanisms, laws, they don't have any significance, or there can be no existence of law without these authorities. Right. So law is an institutionalized rule system established by the governments. Ethics, however, they are only a set of guidelines which one should follow. Ethics enable you to have a belief system which somehow propels you to do the right thing. However, exact or specific prescription of what is the correct behavior is to be found in the law. Generally, when certain ethical principles become accepted widely, they are generally codified into laws. So, like for example, ban of smoking in public places. Like we have seen that in buses or in metro, etc., you are not allowed to smoke because there was an ethical principle which was continuously being followed by individuals of the society. So these practices, they have now been illegal and there are fines imposed if one indulges in such practices. So this way the ethical principles become accepted widely, they are codified into laws. Law is generally narrower in scope than ethics. Like we just saw, laws, they have a narrow scope and they talk about commission most of the times. However, they do not talk about omission. At the start of the lecture, we discussed about that case wherein if we are witnessing an individual who's bleeding by the roadside, and if we don't take him or her to hospital, he or she might die. In that situation, there is no law to guide our behavior that we are compelled to take him or her to the hospital. However, ethics do tell us that it's very unethical or it's unacceptable as a social being to let the person bleed to death. Therefore, the scope of law is narrower than ethics, and to say it otherwise, scope of ethics is larger than the law. Further, there may be areas where law does not exist or is silent or agnostic about the actions, but ethics and morals have wide scope. They guide the actions in almost all kinds of instances. Right. Although legal remedies against unethical actions are not available generally, however, there are ethical prescriptions to what one should do in most of the circumstances or occasions, So most of the actions or the challenges to actions, they can be judged or determined on the basis of ethics. However, law falls a little short. It prescribes in only a limited set of occasions or circumstances. So let us see a few examples in which ethics have given rise to laws. In a democracy especially, it's the ethics that is prevalent in society which gives rise to laws. For example, homosexuality, it was considered unnatural and immoral, or maybe a mental disease or disorder sometimes back. But now, the whole society, it has been discussing all this, and therefore the practice has been considered to be legal now. So the societal ethics has given rise to the judgment of the Supreme Court, wherein the practice has been considered to be legal now. So this was the judgment, Navtej Singh Johar and others versus Union of India, wherein the section 377 of Indian Penal Code, it was considered as unconstitutional. The other example is the Surrogacy Bill 2019, in which the most significant point from the perspective of our ethical dimension is that ban on commercial surrogacy. The ethical practices in India, they consider motherhood to be sacrosanct, In that sense, it has been banned that no one can, commercialize the practice. So it is very much in tune with the ethics of the society. So let us see one case wherein law has given rise to ethics. Because this is also true to an extent, that in India's case, it has been always argued that laws are more liberal than the society. Because at the time of the formulation of our constitution, the majority of society, it was illiterate and believed in superstitious or maybe unscientific practices. However, the people who were representing them in the Constituent Assembly, they were way ahead of the society at that time, and they formed a constitution which was not only liberal but well in tune with the modern times, as well as the democratic principles that were cherished in the developed part of the society. So there are occasions or instances in India wherein laws have given rise to ethics. A famous case is of the pre-independence era, wherein the practice of sati, it was considered, which was prevalent in India. In the 19th century, it was considered, it was banned through law. And this banning of sati, it somehow shaped the ethical framework, and people started, taking themselves away from this practice, and this practice, it gradually, got phased out from the society. Another example in the contemporary times, like we just discussed in our lecture today, is of that ban on triple talaq. Although it can be argued that it's the society or the societal ethics which has given rise to that law. However, even now, there was a lot of opposition to that judgment of Supreme Court and the subsequent law that was enacted by the government in response to that triple talaq judgment. So that judgment in a way has set the tone for the society or the societal ethics to conform to that line of thinking, wherein equality to women is always made a priority over religious practices or personal laws, etc. So this way, laws are giving rise to ethics, especially in societies like India, wherein still there is lack of resources, there is illiteracy. So there can be a case where few wise men take it upon themselves. Another example in contemporary times that comes to mind is about environmental ethics. Like a lot of people in India, they are still not aware of the environmental disasters that are looming because of global warming. So the recent Supreme Court judgments like banning of old vehicles, etc., they are shaping now, or they are helping in raising the awareness about environmental ethics. So in one way, the legal bodies or the law of the land, it is shaping the ethics of the society. However, the ideal case shall be the societal ethics that should shape the law of the land. So friends, this ends our lecture today. Next time we'll see determinants of ethics. Thank you.